Hi, my name is Jeffro, and this is Digital Dominance, the podcast for service-based small business owners who are ready to seize the recognition and growth that their company deserves. You've worked hard to build a business you're proud of. Now it's time for Digital Domination. Welcome back to Digital Dominance. Today, we're diving into the dynamic intersection of video, artificial intelligence, and lead generation strategies tailored for small business owners. In a society where digital presence is paramount for business success, understanding how to harness the power of video and AI can make all the difference. My guest today is Nick Niehaus. He's the co-founder and CEO of Business Video School. Nick is not only an expert in video marketing, but also kind of a pioneer in leveraging AI technology to revolutionize lead generation for small businesses. He has innovative approaches, practical insights, and he's helped thousands of entrepreneurs amplify their online presence and drive tangible results, which is, of course, what we all want. In this episode, we'll explore why video is such a powerful tool in modern marketing and hopefully cover some strategies that every small business owner can implement to leverage video content more effectively. So without further ado, let's welcome Nick Niehaus to the show.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on.
I appreciate it. We were just talking about your background. You have a video school. Obviously, of course, your video is going to look great. For those of you watching on YouTube, you can see Nick's got it put together. If you're just on the podcast, you should notice he probably sounds good too with his microphone. But let's talk about AI first, Nick. That's been a popular topic for a while. And I think some people assumed it was a fad, but it's clear at this point it's not going away. People ignore it at their own peril.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's that. Anytime somebody said that to me, I just sort of laugh out loud. I try not to, right? But it's such a ridiculous thought. I mean, AI has been a part of science fiction for decades and decades, and I've been excited for it coming down the pipe and got here earlier than I thought it would, and it's amazing. There's so much things you can do with this stuff.
Yeah, well, so many applications, like you said, and we'll talk a little bit about how that applies here. But high level, as we're kind of getting into this and framing this whole conversation, video content has also been a popular trend in marketing strategies, especially with, TikTok and Instagram Reels and stuff. It's becoming more and more, it's just everywhere, right? So can you explain why video works so effectively?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. There's a part of your brain. It's called the fusiform gyrus. It's dedicated to recognizing objects. And there's a subdivision of it called the fusiform face area, which is exactly what it says, right? It remembers faces and it recognizes faces. And I think that alone, that's probably the most impactful part of video, is that when someone watches a video, like if you're watching this right now, consciously, I'm not here in front of you, but a lot of these parts of your brain don't really understand that. They see a face and that activates that part of your brain that kind of turns a certain understanding on. It develops trust. There's this psychological principle, the familiarity principle, which basically just says, hey, the more often you show up in front of somebody, the more they automatically start to like and trust you. That's worth paying attention to, just from the sense of, are there any people, celebrities, thought leaders that you may feel that you trust that you just really don't actually know? It's kind of worth exploring that, a little bit for yourselves. But that's why it's so powerful, right? Because anytime we're seeing that person on camera, we feel like they're there in front of us. It's harder to say no to somebody face to face. It feels more real. It makes that person more of a real person. I think this is where I teach a lot of people this stuff. And the problem they have is that their competitors aren't extensively using these things yet, although that is starting to happen. They're starting to see it, day-to-day life. But as soon as they do, it pulls the attention away from you and your business, right? I think that's what you have to watch out for, is as this stuff gets adopted, you will eventually start to feel the pain, get in front of it, right? Because it takes a little bit of time to get used to being on camera and develop that confidence. But that little brain aspect of it's probably the most important part. I think there's all kinds of other layers too, in terms of what we remember, what we can retain, showing versus telling. I could talk on it for 10 minutes, but I think the big thing is it's all about your face. If you can get your face on camera, people are going to get to know you. They're going to develop that trust with you. And that helps a ton in business.
Is there any sign of that part of the brain getting like overwhelmed or tired after a while to where video becomes less effective?
It's a good question. I don't know for sure. I haven't really seen it. I mean, if you look at the trends, every year we're still consuming more video content. I do think overall our brains are just sort of fried in general, right? I mean, there's massive burnout, right? I mean, just any content. I mean, I think about it for myself all the time. I'm like, my phone is in my hand all the time. I'm looking at two screens, I mean, there's just I really think we're probably absorbing 10, 20, 50 times more information than humans were 100 years ago, even 50 years ago. So that's definitely part of it. But video itself, I think there are places the video doesn't work, right? Like if somebody's driving their car, they're not gonna be watching video. Could they be listening to a podcast? Yeah, right. So there's all these kind of places that I think video is harder to consume and therefore is not the right sort of thing for that spot. But otherwise, the value is just so immense there. So I think the answer though is probably we will reach that point, right? I mean, there's only so much of this that we can consume in a day, and it does get old after a while. But I do think even just people scrolling through social, if they're a little burnt out on the video and they're not watching it, but they're still seeing your face pop up for that 1 or 2 seconds, it just has that much of an impact. It's crazy. I mean, I go to networking events now, and every single time there's at least a few people that walk up and they want to talk to me, and it's like we've been talking every day for the past couple months. It's always a little weird, because I don't know anything about them most of the time. But it's great, because people, they feel like they know me, and that's what you want, right?
Yeah, well, it makes closing deals so much easier because you don't have to convince them that you're trustworthy. They've already decided that you are because, not only just from seeing your face, but from consuming your content, hearing the fact that you know what you're talking about, and that all plays together. So it does make, it's an investment of time to have that many impressions in front of someone, but then it does start to pay those rewards over time.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't really even sell at a certain point. I mean, if that person's seen enough of your content, they just want to know how to buy. That's it, right?
Which is, that's the dream.
Yeah, right.
Have people lining up with money to give you. So
that is it.
With all this in mind, so what about the small business owner that hasn't done this yet? Do you have some simple strategies for how that person can start implementing video and leveraging that for their business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think many people, when they hear video, they think social media, and they sort of think of this very public experience. It's very much a performance. I think certain generations even think TV or movies, and they kind of put this idea in their head that, oh, I'm being in front of thousands of people and who knows who they are. And that's clearly overwhelming. That is not a good place to start. So I try to sort of flip the script entirely. And I ask somebody, look, is there something you can do where you can talk to just one person at a time with a video, right? I mean, we've been doing it on Zoom for the past 4 years out of sort of necessity. I think kind of weird because people sort of discount that. I'm like, that's video just like anything else. But I like video messages, right? So just one-to-one video messages. So this is something you're recording. Only one other person is ever going to see it. It's being sent to them privately. There's no performance element. My favorite example of that is happy birthday videos. So just, Facebook even gives you a list and there's a message button next to each name. You just click it, record a 10-second video and send it over. It's really simple. But that kind of stuff, I mean, there's no better way to practice, right? Very low pressure environment, but you're practicing all the same stuff, looking into the camera lens, holding the phone correctly, lighting yourself, those sorts of things will sort of naturally just get better and better as you do more of them. But the pressure's not there. There's no performance at all. The crazy part is that this is also what I've seen. It's the most effective and impactful kind of video you can do. So you would think, oh, I want to go viral on social. Well, that's great, but you're probably getting in front of a bunch of people who have never seen you before. Some of them might decide to follow you and may eventually become customers, right? When you focus on this more intimate kind of video, you're talking to people who already know you. There's a relationship. There's some familiarity. And you're just accentuating that, right? You're kind of just reminding this person that you're there and that you care about them and that the relationship matters. And I was shocked by this, and it just sort of keeps confirming itself. These happy birthday video messages seem to get a lot of business, right? Because it just matters. And I'm thinking this now because my birthday was literally yesterday, and I did get some of these videos, and I'm literally recalling those people's faces in my head right now. But that's the kind of impact it has. It shows people you care about them. And that's really what matters, right? I mean, a lot of ways business is relationships. And we're talking a 10-second commitment to have somebody thinking about you arguably for months, whenever they need that product or service, you're going to be that face that pops into their head, right? I'd start there. There's a lot of other areas we could obviously get into, but I think until you have a video messaging habit where it's something you're doing on a regular basis, there's really no point in going anywhere else. And that's not just customers, not just prospects. I mean, think about it with employees if you have them. Think about doing that with referral partners. I mean, talk about a great way to stay top of mind with referral partners. Once you do that a few weeks, every other kind of video feels a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, I like that because you're right. That way it doesn't feel like as big of a deal or performance, like, oh, I got to make a video for social media today. Like, what's it going to be? There's less anxiety. And like you said, it gets easier. But I was thinking it's kind of like, making eye contact with somebody. Text message is kind of like oh, yeah, sure, whatever. You don't look. But if you stop and look at them and say, oh, actually, yeah, that sounds good to me. Like that little difference is huge. And you taking that extra step of sending the video is essentially, that little connection, and that matters.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what it is, right? I mean, that's why it's so important to look into the camera lens, because that is the eye contact, right? We when we watch the video, we can't help but look into that person's eyes as long as they're looking at the camera. And I mean, that's what's so cool about video, especially, is just all these little things that you're right are such huge multipliers. All these social cues, right? I honestly, this is kind of getting a little off topic, but it's, if you look at social media and the internet and kind of how things started, in a certain sense, we kind of took this massive step backwards because we got used to talking to each other on the phone, right? And at least then you can hear tone of voice, you get a little bit more of kind of who that real person is by being able to hear them. Then we went back to text-based communication, right? Emails, social media was kind of mostly just text initially. And at a time where I think we'd gotten sort of worse at writing. It's funny, you go back to when people used to write letters. I mean, how long they spend days working on a letter to get every single word just right, because they knew this is an imperfect way to talk to somebody, And now we're firing off these social media posts that are 3 paragraphs long. We spent 2 minutes writing them, and people read it with their own emotion in their head, and there's all this sort of miscommunication there. So I think also keeping that in mind, it's like we're communicating in these places where people are having a hard time understanding each other. They're having a hard time, feeling any kind of empathy for each other. So when you show up on camera, right, all those cues are there, and you don't have to be as careful, right? I mean, it's much harder for me to make like a political statement and be able to see me and watch my face and see that I'm not angry and all that kind of stuff, and then still respond to that with some sort of snide comment. It'll happen, right? But it's much harder for people to do because it's just a lot harder to misunderstand each other.
Got it. And that's great. I love that we're having this conversation too. So let's go back to AI for a second. People are probably getting tired of hearing that AI technology is going to revolutionize things like lead generation. I put it in my intro just for fun. But what are your thoughts on how small business owners can realistically use AI to help them generate leads?
So I think with AI, for one, the buzz is starting to fade out. That's also just because AI is just getting embedded into everything now. And it already was. I think it got really hot. ChatGPT sort of blew the doors open. Now you can use it directly. But we were already dealing with these algorithms. The social media platforms were already algorithmic, many years ago, so it's already having this sort of major effect on our day-to-day lives. It's not going away. It's just going to continue to expand. So for small businesses, a lot of them, I think, are making this mistake of thinking of AI as a way to save themselves time or money. That's okay. It's a good way to think. We want to be efficient in business. But the ones I think are going to win are the ones that are focusing on where can this give my customer a better experience. And so my take on this is we've actually focused on, can I take, let me put it this way, like, is there advice that if somebody called me up and asked me a series of questions, or I asked them a series of questions, kind of gathered some information about them and their business, then I could respond with completely custom advice for them, right? That's really inefficient. And like, that's not the kind of thing I can just start doing with hundreds of people every month, right? AI though can do that. And I think that's what's so cool is that we can build these sort of intentionally very limited and specific tools. I call them AI lead magnets because we generally use them to attract leads. So for example, we made one that you tell it what your business is, sort of a couple details about who you are, where you're based, what you do for a living, what's your best service, things like that. And then you describe your ideal client. Who's this person? What are their pain points? What are their interests? And what it does is it then, and this is based on some rules I set kind of behind the scenes that you don't see, but it replies with 48 completely custom video topic ideas, right? That are completely unique to that customer. And I think that is a huge opportunity here where ask yourself, what are some of the things that if you had more time, if you could have an hour long conversation with every lead in your database and reply with like a completely customized guide for them, what are those questions that they have? What are those pains that they're experiencing, especially a little bit earlier in their process, right? So maybe before they would be willing to reach out and spend money with you, what's a question that they might have, and can we provide them something at that moment that gives them a completely customized answer? And I think if you do that, and this is where video comes in too, you combine it with video, right? You put yourself on the page with a little video explaining how you use these kinds of things. They come on, they use it, they see you, they get to know you. And then the AI is the tool is something you provided, right? So the benefit comes from you, and they associate that as kind of part of their relationship. What that does is it prevents them as seeing the AI as a replacement for you. And I think that this is a common message right now. The people that know how to use the AI are going to replace the people that don't use it at all. It's not going to necessarily replace us entirely. Now, 30, 40 years from now, who knows? This stuff's, taken off so fast. It changes so quickly. But I think that's going to be the big thing is like, really, where can you provide a higher level of customized service to a customer? And I think people are going to be very clearly attracted to those businesses.
Yeah, well, I like the way you set that up too. It's using the AI as more of an augmentation rather than a replacement. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people and companies make is, we can just have AI do this now. And that call the phone and you just get this computer and you're banging your head against the desk because you can't get a human, right? And I think people are getting tired of messages that are clearly written by AI. And so what you propose kind of gets around that essentially, because you're still there with video connecting with the person saying, hey, here's this thing that can help you. Here's how you get value out of it. It's not like a replacement. It's just an add-on.
Yeah. I mean, because to me, like, I don't like AI chatbots. I get the concept, right? And I've had some conversations with a few that got me the answer I needed, and I appreciated that, right? So I get the utility of them, but they're very open-ended, So there's these companies like, we got this chatbot and it knows everything. And for most people, that's overwhelming. Like I actually remember I taught a class on AI a few months after ChatGPT came out. And even after like an hour of explaining how it works and how to talk to it and all this kind of stuff, then we gave everybody their computers and said, all right, go make the thing we're talking about. And most of them just sat there and they still were like, but what do I do? What do I say? Because this idea of like this AI basically has access to like almost all human knowledge, which is like, that's insane, right? So that's the point is like for a lot of folks, the challenge is not that they can't see how these tools are valuable. It's that it's too broad. There's too many decisions, there's too many inputs that they have to make. And so, yeah, it's sort of like, because you have people come in and be like, I can use, I've had a few folks that are kind of high level AI people like, I can have a prompt. I can just put a prompt in and get that response. I'm like, great. You don't need my tool then, you're not my ideal customer. The person that says, look, if you ask me a couple questions and then you give me something based on that, that's great, right? Because I don't have to think very hard. So I do think that that's where it comes down to. And the cool thing about that is that you can take your expertise and you kind of stick it in the middle there, right? Because that's what's behind the scenes on the back end of these tools is a prompt. And it's basically you kind of guiding the AI, telling it, what you think is important. Should a video have a really strong hook or not? Should it have a call to action at the end if you're writing a script? Things like that. And then when it replies, it's applying the rules that you would if you were having a conversation. So it's not going to talk just like you. You can make them that fancy if you want. I don't think you need to. But it is still going to sort of show people your philosophy and some of your values as a business. And that helps sort of build that relationship as well, right? So I think it's the key is, you got to keep it simple for folks, and that's really where the ad works, right? Because we show this ad and it's like, hey, 48 custom ideas developed just for you and your ideal customer. That makes sense, right? If I say, hey, I've got a chatbot on my computer that can answer any question you have about video, why would I click that? That's completely broad, right? So it's all about, understand the customer, what are their pain points, and then give them just the thing that they need at this moment, strip anything else out of it, and you're just going to get a lot more people coming to you.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Now, you have a new project called Everyday AI. Can you tell us a little more about how that works and how it kind of ties into this conversation?
Yeah, so that's these AI tools. So basically what happened is I was initially building some of these tools. I'm kind of a tech nerd, but I've never been patient enough to learn how to code. I've always wanted to know how to code. Tried a few times, right? I just could not get myself to sit down and learn it. But I've always thought, hey, if I had somebody who could write code, like I've got all these fun ideas I'd love to try. So when I realized that AI could write the code for me, I started to wonder, hey, can I make some tools for our students in business video school, right? So I did that. I created a scripter and an idea generator and even one that makes like backgrounds for videos that you can kind of use as your green screen backdrop. So at that point, we started to say, well, what if we gave access to these tools away? Because every time somebody uses it, it costs us some money. It's not free, but it's pretty affordable. And so we tried that, and we started generating all these leads. And so that kind of led me to like, all right, there's clearly something here. And that's what Everyday AI is that that's the platform's brand new. When you're hearing this, maybe it's a little less brand new. But basically, I'm making these tools and then allowing other companies to put them on their website to attract business, right? So I've got kind of a different sort of variety of them right now. I've got a few that are intentionally for real estate agents. Like one is called a neighborhood matchmaker, where you describe your ideal neighborhood and the proximate area where you want to live. And it tells you what neighborhoods to go look at, based on that information. So they stick that on their site. And then right now I'm working on a pilot program. We're getting some people started here in the next few months going through this challenge where we're going to show them all the different ways to use the tool. One of the coolest things about it is that it increases the amount of time people spend on your website, right? So this is something where they see, they show up, doing a Google search, right? You write a little bit of a blog post, they show up, they read your post. Well, then there's this interactive tool they can play around with, right? So now instead of spending 2 minutes on your site, they're spending 10 minutes on your site. That's a really strong signal for Google. They're going to bump your rankings. Again, this is all really new, so this is somewhat theoretical, but that's the idea, right? So we're building a lot of different versions of these. So I'm always looking for ideas. So if you're watching this and thinking, man, I wish I had this on my site, and you want to send it over to me, maybe I'll build it for you. But right now it's mostly real estate stuff and then mostly marketing, right? So I've got some like marketing idea, marketing strategist tool, again, same sort of thing. You explain your ideal customer and what you do, and then it gives you marketing strategies to try. And so, yeah, we're really early stages right now, but at least in my own businesses, it's been highly effective. I think it worked better in some areas than others. But that's what we're doing. So if that sounds good, check us out.
Yeah, that's awesome. So earlier you said for people who haven't done video yet, the best way to start is kind of do this one-on-one video messaging, kind of get in the habit of it. What about for AI, for people that haven't utilized AI yet? Where do they start? What are the stepping stones?
Yeah. So, there's so many of these tools, and I only know such a fraction of them, right? It's, you almost have to kind of keep your blinders on a little bit and stay focused on the couple you know how to use. So I'm a big ChatGPT proponent. It was the first one to kind of open up to the public and kicked all this off. I'm still there. I think there's others that are great too. But I think it's the way the analogy I always use for people getting started is, think about each of the chats that you start, because each chat kind of has its own memory. It's going to remember the conversation you're having with it. You just treat each one like a new employee, right? So not just an employee, but very specifically a new employee, with the idea being, look, if you hire somebody, they have whatever their background and expertise is. That's usually why you hired them. So we can assume that like they understand the facts and details and all that kind of stuff, but they don't have the guidance on what you want. So that's the part you really have to be very clear about, right? So with a new employee, there's an onboarding process, and here's our rules, and here's what I believe, and here's what the company stands for. And if you don't do those things, if that employee messes up in those areas, you would hopefully recognize that that's kind of your fault for not giving them that instruction. Same thing with AI, right? So if you go into that conversation, you just start by telling it how you want it to behave, right? So I really like to say, look, I want you to act like, a real estate videographer who specializes in making professional videos for realtors that are really effective ads. You can go a step further. Maybe there's certain, advertising experts you followed. You could even put those names in, say, I kind of want you to act like this person. It may or may not know who that person is. But then, yeah, it's all about being really, like, an example I'll give you is when I was writing code, I would give it existing code, right? And one thing I realized I had to be really specific about with the AI was, look, I want you to use this as an example. I want you to produce a tool that has all the exact same details in it, where you only change the things that are needed for the new functionality, and otherwise everything else should be exactly the same. Because otherwise it gets creative, and that's just its nature, right? So it's just otherwise, if I just gave it and said, this is an example, make a new one, it will change parts of it that didn't need to be changed because it just doesn't know not to. So that's really what it comes down to, is be really specific, almost more detail than you even think you need, and then give it feedback. It takes feedback really well, probably better than a person, because it doesn't get offended at all, right? So if it screws up, there's some people who are even kind of respectful. They'll say, hey, that wasn't perfect. Let me give you some, others are a little more abrupt. I'm kind of in the middle. I think, if AI does take over at some point, You know, I don't want it to go back and find I was rude to it back in 2024, but
it'll remember everything.
Yeah, well, exactly right. You know, it's going to have all this stuff stored somewhere, I would assume. So, but yeah, you just give it feedback. You talk, hey, you didn't do that right. You know, here's what I really wanted. And a lot of times it'll apologize. You know, I'm so sorry. Let me do it again for you. So it's kind of funny. But I find that, you know, if you do that a little bit, it doesn't take long. I mean, a couple back and forth, a good sort of starter prompt. And now you have what kind of feels like an actual employee, you know, because again, it can act as an expert in all kinds of areas. The only thing at that point then is just push it, see what it can do. And then the last thing I'll say there is just always make sure if there's any sort of facts, any sort of information in its output, that you double check them. That this has gotten a lot better, but there is still hallucination. It's still going to make mistakes every now and then. And you just don't want to put something out that ends up being, you know, incorrect or a lie, obviously.
Right.
So just don't be too reliant on it, right? Make sure you double check those details. But yeah, from there, I mean, a lot of people, you get going, you're going to be excited. You're going to start coming up with new ways to use it.
Awesome. Well, that's great advice, Nick. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. I think there's a lot of cool stuff here that people can take and run with. So for those of you who are listening, go to the link in the description, sign up for a free trial of Nick's AI tools if you want help with video content creation and all this stuff. Last question, Nick, what's the most important thing that you want the audience to take away from this episode?
You know, I think the big thing is starting as small as possible, you know, because I think both these categories, video, maybe more than AI, but both of them, they're very overwhelming. They're huge. You know, I mean, we teach video and it's like every month there's like 5 more classes we have to create because it's just such a complex sort of overall subject. And we just want to accomplish everything at once, right? Like when we finally decide, hey, I want to take that, I want to get started. I want to do everything I put off for the past 3 years in the next 3 days. And it never works, right? We try, we fall flat on our face after a few days and we lose all our momentum. So just don't be reluctant to sort of take a step back and say, like, what is the simplest first step? What's the smallest thing I can do? A lot of times it's just using these things in your personal life instead of in your business, right? I mean, there's just so much less pressure. Say happy birthday to your sibling or your aunt or something, right? I mean, if they make fun of you, I mean, you get family problems, I guess. But, you know, it's like it shouldn't be a big deal to talk to your family and your friends. So just start there, keep it simple, and then see where it goes from there.
Sounds good. Thanks again for being here, Nick. Thanks to all of you for listening. AI isn't just a passing fad, so make sure you're not treating it like one. Start taking those baby steps. All right, take care, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Digital Dominance Podcast. This show is brought to you by FroBro.com. FroBro is on a mission to rid the world of terrible websites, and we love helping our clients grow their businesses as big as our hair. Right now, FroBro is offering an SEO plus leads bundle where you can get warm leads every month without having to wait for the SEO to ramp up. To learn more, go to FroBroLeads.com.